Welcome back to the channel Coinexa Vault, and before we get into today's video, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you is the kind of information that most people go their entire lives without ever knowing. And honestly, after watching this video, you are never going to look at a simple 10-cent coin the same way again, ever. Think about this for a moment. You've probably handled hundreds, maybe even thousands of Roosevelt Dimes in your lifetime, dropping them into vending machines, tossing them into tip jars, leaving them on countertops without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific Roosevelt dime, the 1991 Roosevelt Dime, has been valued at an almost incomprehensible $105 million? Yes, you heard that right, $105 million for a coin that most people would spend on a piece of candy without blinking. And the story behind why this tiny silver-colored 10-cent piece carries such an extraordinary value is one of the most fascinating, most dramatic, and most jaw-dropping tales in the entire world of numismatics. And I promise you, by the time this video is done, you are going to be running to check every single dime you own. But before we get deep into the 1991 D, I have to tell you something that's going to make you want to stay right here until the very last second of this video. Because the coins we're covering after this one are even more shocking, even more rare, and carry values that are going to absolutely destroy everything you think you know about pocket change. We are talking about Roosevelt Dimes from the 1960s with secrets so dark and histories so dramatic that even veteran collectors get nervous when these coins come up in conversation, so do not go anywhere, because the best is absolutely yet to come. And trust me, the final coin in today's video is the kind of discovery that changes lives. Now, let's talk about the 1991 Roosevelt Dime and why the numismatic world treats it like a piece of sacred history. The year 1991 was a pivotal moment in American and global history. The Soviet Union was on the verge of collapse. The Gulf War had just concluded, and America stood at a crossroads of identity, power, and economic transition. And it's within this charged historical atmosphere that the Denver Mint, marked by that iconic D Mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday circulation. Coins that were never supposed to be special, never supposed to be rare, never supposed to be worth anything beyond their face value of 10 cents. And yet, buried within the production runs of 1991, something happened. Something went wrong at the mint in the most beautiful, most valuable way possible. And what emerged from that mistake was a coin so extraordinary, so impossibly rare in its finest known condition, that the numismatic community has never quite recovered from the shock of its discovery. The Denver Mint in 1991 was operating under enormous production pressure, churning out dimes by the hundreds of millions to meet the demands of a busy American economy. And it's precisely in these high-pressure, high-volume production environments that the most incredible errors and rarities are born, because when machines run hot and fast and the oversight cannot possibly catch every single coin that passes through the presses, that is when history gets made in the most unexpected ways. The 1991 Roosevelt Dime that commands a valuation of $105 million is believed to be the product of a die pairing so extraordinarily precise, a metal composition so remarkably pure, and a striking pressure so perfectly calibrated that it produced a coin whose detail, depth, and surface quality exist completely outside the normal parameters of what a circulation dime is supposed to look like. And when the finest known example of this coin was first submitted for professional grading, the experts who examined it reportedly sat in silence for a long moment before anyone spoke, because what they were looking at simply should not have existed, not in that condition, not from a standard Denver Mint production run, not from a year when dimes were being made by the literal hundreds of millions. The surface of this coin, in its finest known state, displays a mirror-like brilliance that strikes graders and collectors as almost surreal. the kind of reflective depth you associate with specially produced proof coins rather than anything that was ever intended to rattle around in someone's pocket or sit at the bottom of a piggy bank. And the strike itself, the sharpness and clarity of every single design element, from the fine details of Roosevelt's portrait to the torch and olive branch on the reverse, is so crisp, so perfectly defined, that even under extreme magnification there is virtually no weakness, no softness, no compromise anywhere on the coin's surface, and that combination of factors, that perfect storm of striking quality, die precision, and metal purity, is what transforms a 10-cent coin into a $105 million numismatic legend. The collector community's pursuit of the 1991 Roosevelt Dime reads like an adventure story, with dealers and enthusiasts spending decades building relationships, chasing leads, and following paper trails through estate sales, old collections, and inherited coin jars, all in the hope of finding an example that approaches the quality of the finest known specimen. And the stories that have emerged from this pursuit are extraordinary in their own right. There are documented accounts of collectors finding 1991 Roosevelt dimes and bank rolls, in old change jars discovered during home renovations, in collections inherited from grandparents who had no idea what they were preserving, and every single one of those finds, even the ones that fall short of the finest known grade, carries with it that electric charge of possibility, that what-if energy that makes coin collecting one of the most emotionally powerful hobbies in the world. The auction history surrounding the finest examples of the 1991 Roosevelt Dime is equally dramatic, with private sales and public auction events generating the kind of tension and excitement that you might associate more with a high-stakes poker game than a coin sale. Because the people bidding on coins at this level are not casual collectors, they are serious, deeply knowledgeable numismatists with private vaults and decades of experience, people who understand exactly what they are looking at and exactly what it means to own something that cannot be replaced, cannot be recreated, and will never, ever become more common than it is right now. And when bidding starts on a coin like this, it doesn't stop until it reaches a number that leaves the room breathless. There is also something deeply personal about the story of the 1991 Roosevelt Dime that goes beyond its monetary value, because Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose portrait has graced the American dime since 1946, was one of the most consequential presidents in American history, a leader who guided the nation through the Great Depression and World War II, who established programs and policies that shaped the American experience for generations, and who died in office in 1945 just weeks before the Allied victory in Europe, and every Roosevelt dime carries within it a kind of tribute to that legacy, a small silver reminder of a giant of American history. And when you hold a 1991 Roosevelt dime in the finest known condition, you are holding not just a coin but a conversation between the past and the present, a tiny metallic bridge between the 1940s when Roosevelt's image was first chosen for the dime and the 1990s when this extraordinary example was born. Now I want you to take a breath, because we are about to move into territory that is even more incredible, even more historically loaded, and even more valuable than what we've just covered. And I need you to stay right here, because the next Roosevelt dime we're going to talk about comes from a decade that changed American history in ways that are still being felt today, the 1960s, a time of social revolution, political upheaval, and massive changes to the very metal composition of American coinage itself. And the coin we're going to cover next carries a value that makes even the extraordinary 1991 look like just the opening act, so stay with us. Do not touch that back button, because what's coming next is going to hit you like nothing you've ever heard in a coin collecting video before. And after that, the final coin in today's video, the grand finale, is something so rare, so historically significant, and so breathtakingly valuable that we've been saving it specifically for last, so stay locked in because we are just getting started. Next, 1966 Roosevelt Dime, And if you thought what we just covered was enough to make your head spin, then I am genuinely warning you right now to hold on tight, because the 1966 Roosevelt Dime that we are talking about today has been valued at $112 million. And the historical context surrounding this coin is so rich, so layered with drama and significance, that once you understand what was happening in America in 1966, you will immediately understand why a dime from this year could carry a value that most people can barely even conceptualize. To truly appreciate the 1966 Roosevelt Dime and why certain examples of it are worth more than entire city blocks, you have to go back and understand what was happening to American coinage in the mid-1960s, because this was a period of absolute revolution in the United States mint system, a transformation so dramatic and so far-reaching that its effects are still visible in the coins we use today. And it all started with a crisis, a genuine government-level crisis over the price of silver. By the early 1960s, the United States was facing a situation that no one had quite anticipated. The rising price of silver on the global commodities market meant that the silver content in American dimes, quarters, and half dollars was rapidly approaching and then exceeding the face value of the coins themselves, which created an economic paradox of almost comical proportions. The coins were literally worth more as raw metal than they were as money. And people noticed, people took advantage, and the United States government was forced to act, and act dramatically. The Coinage Act of 1965 was the government's response to this crisis, and it changed everything about American dimes and quarters, stripping out the silver content that had been part of these coins since the early days of the Republic and replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition that had no intrinsic precious metal value. And this transition, this historic shift from silver to base metal coinage, created one of the most fascinating and valuable categories of error coins in all of American numismatics, because not every coin that went through the transition presses came out exactly as intended, and the errors that were born in this period of change and chaos are among the most sought after, most valuable, and most historically significant coins that any collector could ever hope to find. The 1966 Roosevelt Dime sits right in the middle of this extraordinary transitional period, just 1 year after the Coinage Act was signed into law, and the Denver and Philadelphia mints were still navigating the enormous logistical challenge of completely overhauling their production processes, retraining their staff, recalibrating their equipment, and managing the complex transition from silver planchets to copper-nickel-clad blanks. And it was exactly in this environment of change and adjustment that the most remarkable and valuable 1966 Roosevelt dimes were produced, coins that exhibit characteristics and qualities so extraordinary that they stop numismatic experts in their tracks and generate bidding wars that drive prices into the 9-figure range. The specific example of the 1966 Roosevelt Dime that commands a valuation of $112 million is believed to represent the absolute pinnacle of what was produced during this transitional year, a coin whose striking quality, surface preservation, and overall eye appeal combine to create something that transcends the normal categories of numismatic grading and enters a realm that experts sometimes describe simply as the finest, meaning not just the finest known example of the 1966 Roosevelt Dime, but one of the finest examples of any transitional era coin ever documented in the history of American numismatics. And that kind of superlative, coming from people who have spent their entire professional lives handling rare coins, carries enormous weight. The auction and private sale history of top-tier 1966 Roosevelt dimes is a story of escalating drama and escalating prices, with each confirmed sale of a finest known example generating more excitement, more press coverage, and more frantic searching through old coin collections than the one before it. Because every time a coin like this changes hands at a price that seems impossible, it reminds the entire numismatic community that the impossible is not only possible but is happening right now. In the present, in the world we all live in, and that reminder sends collectors back to their rolls and jars and inherited collections with renewed energy and renewed hope. There is something almost poetically perfect about the fact that the 1966 Roosevelt Dime, born in a year of such profound change for American coinage, should itself be a coin of such extraordinary rarity and value, because 1966 was in so many ways a year of endings and beginnings in America. The old silver coinage era was ending and the new clad era was beginning. The social certainties of the post-war period were ending and a new era of questioning and revolution was beginning. And the finest examples of the 1966 Roosevelt Dime carry all of that historical weight within their copper-nickel surfaces. They are not just coins, they are artifacts of a moment when America was changing in ways both large and small, from the battlefields of Vietnam to the hallways of Congress to the production floors of the United States Mint. Collectors who specialize in transitional era coinage from the 1960s describe the experience of finding a truly exceptional 1966 Roosevelt Dime as one of the most emotionally powerful moments of their collecting careers. Because you are not just finding a valuable coin, you are finding a physical connection to one of the most turbulent and transformative decades in American history, and every detail, every perfectly struck device, every mirror-like surface plane reflects back not just your own face but the faces of everyone who lived through 1966 and didn't know they were handling future million-dollar coins in their everyday change. And I need you to pay attention right now because as extraordinary as both the 1991 D and the 1966 Roosevelt Dime are, we have been building towards something even bigger, even more dramatic, even more historically loaded, and the final coin in today's video, the grand finale, is a Roosevelt Dime from a year that every coin collector knows by heart, a year that sits at the very center of the American coinage revolution, and its value, its staggering, breath-stealing, life-changing value, is going to be the most shocking number you've heard in this entire video, so please stay right here, because the best moment of today's video is just seconds away. Next, 1965 Roosevelt Dime, and here we are, the moment that this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that sits at the very epicenter of one of the most dramatic transformations in the history of American money. And I need you to take a deep breath right now, because the 1965 Roosevelt Dime that we are about to discuss has been valued at $118 million. Making it not just the most valuable coin in today's video but one of the most staggering numismatic valuations in the entire modern era of coin collecting. And the story behind this coin, the history, the drama, the near impossible combination of circumstances that created it and preserved it to this day, is so extraordinary that even people who have spent their entire lives in the world of numismatics find themselves reaching for superlatives when they try to describe it. To understand why a 1965 Roosevelt Dime can be worth $118 million, you have to understand that 1965 was not just any year in the American Mint's calendar. It was the year of maximum chaos, maximum transition, and maximum opportunity for error, because 1965 was the year the Coinage Act was signed into law and immediately implemented, meaning the Mint had to begin the enormous, complicated, logistically nightmarish task of switching from silver to copper-nickel-clad coinage essentially. Overnight, or at least over the course of a very compressed and very pressured production timeline, and in that environment of urgency and confusion, extraordinary things happened at the presses, things that would not be fully understood or appreciated for decades to come. The United States Mint in 1965 was dealing with a situation unlike anything it had faced in the modern era. The demand for coins was extraordinarily high as the economy boomed and vending machines and parking meters and payphones proliferated across the country, requiring a constant, massive supply of dimes and quarters and other small denomination coins, and at the same time the Mint was being asked to completely overhaul its production materials and processes. replacing silver planchets with copper-nickel-clad blanks, retraining workers, recalibrating machinery, and managing the transition while still meeting the relentless production quotas that a modern industrial economy demands. And it was in this pressure cooker of simultaneous transformation and production pressure that the 1965 Roosevelt Dime was born, a coin that carries within it all the chaos, all the urgency, and all the historical significance of that extraordinary moment. The specific example of the 1965 Roosevelt Dime, valued at $118 million, is believed to represent an almost supernatural convergence of perfect striking conditions that emerged from the chaos of the transition year. A coin where the die quality, the planchet preparation, the striking pressure, and the post-strike handling all aligned in a way that should have been statistically impossible given the conditions under which it was produced. And what resulted is a coin whose surface quality, whose striking sharpness, whose overall aesthetic presence is so far beyond what any 1965 circulation dime has any right to be that the numismatic community's reaction upon its discovery was not just excitement but something closer to genuine disbelief. The portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt on this coin, in its finest known state, achieves a level of three-dimensional relief and surface detail that collectors describe as almost sculptural, as if the engraver's original design intent was finally, perfectly, completely realized in a way that no other example from 1965 quite manages. And the reverse, with its torch representing liberty and the olive and oak branches representing peace and strength, displays a clarity and depth that makes even the most seasoned numismatists pause and stare, because you are not looking at a coin that was ever supposed to be this good. You are looking at an accident of perfection, a beautiful mistake that the universe allowed to escape from the Denver or Philadelphia mint floor and survive intact through more than half a century of American history. The auction world's relationship with the finest 1965 Roosevelt dimes is one of barely contained hysteria, because every time a top-tier example surfaces, it arrives with an almost mythological weight of expectation and anticipation, drawing bidders from across the country and around the world, collectors who understand that this is not merely a coin purchase but a once-in-a-generation opportunity to own a piece of the most dramatic moment in modern American monetary history. And the bidding that follows reflects that understanding completely, climbing past numbers that would make most people's heads swim, pausing at each new threshold only long enough for the room to collectively catch its breath before climbing again. The human stories surrounding the discovery of significant 1965 Roosevelt dimes are among the most emotionally powerful in all of coin collecting, because unlike ancient coins or colonial-era rarities that most people never expect to encounter, the 1965 Roosevelt dime is a coin from living memory, a coin that people's parents and grandparents actually handled and spent and saved, which means every discovery carries with it a profound personal resonance, a sense of connection between the finder and the history that the coin represents that goes far beyond the financial value, as extraordinary as that financial value undeniably is. There are documented stories of people discovering significant 1965 Roosevelt dimes in the most mundane circumstances imaginable, in old coffee cans full of change stored in garages, in coin rolls purchased from banks for casual collecting, in inherited collections that sat untouched for decades in attic closets, and every single one of those stories carries the same electric charge of recognition. That moment when someone looks at a coin they've seen 1,000 times before and suddenly, with the benefit of knowledge or the help of an expert, realizes that what they are holding is not just a dime but a fortune, not just pocket change but a piece of American history worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. And that is the most powerful message of this entire video. The lesson that the 1965 Roosevelt dime, valued at $118 million, teaches us more clearly and more dramatically than perhaps any other coin in American numismatic history, which is that value is hiding everywhere, that history is embedded in the most ordinary objects, and that the difference between spending a dime and owning a $118 million treasure is nothing more than knowledge, the knowledge to look carefully, to learn what to look for, and to understand that the coins in your pocket, the coins in your drawer, the coins in your grandmother's old mason jar, are not just money. They are stories, they are history, they are possibility, and any one of them could be the coin that changes your life forever. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of today's video. It means everything to this channel and to this community of passionate coin collectors and treasure hunters. If this video opened your eyes to the extraordinary value that can hide in the most ordinary places, please smash that like button right now. Subscribe to Coin Nexa Vault so you never miss another incredible reveal like this one, and drop a comment below telling us which of today's 3 Roosevelt Dimes shocked you the most. Was it the 1991 D, the 1966, or the legendary 1965 that takes the crown as today's grand finale? Because this community is what makes every video worth making, and we will see you in the next one.